This story, the visuals, and this presentation are created using advanced artificial intelligence based on real historical events and records to honor those lost during this tragic shipwreck in the deep Atlantic. We invite you to experience this journey with a positive and respectful spirit as we explore the final resting place of heroes and the treasures they guarded until the very end. Please support our channel by subscribing as we continue to document these incredible deep ocean discoveries and ensure the stories of these brave souls are never forgotten by future generations around the world. In December 1853, the state-of-the-art steamship SS San Francisco departed from New York carrying 700 souls and a massive fortune in gold coins destined for the expanding American frontier in California. Days into the voyage, a perfect storm hurricane hammered the vessel into a splintered wreck, turning a symbol of modern progress into a drifting biological tomb filled with disease and desperate people. Deep within the hold sat the gold payroll for the 3rd U.S. Artillery Regiment, valued today at over $160 million, weighing down a ship already fighting for survival. For 14 long and terrifying days, the survivors clung to the floating wreckage while a cholera outbreak claimed the lives of children and soldiers who were powerless against the sea and sickness. Among those fighting to survive was Sergeant Major John Gallagher, a career soldier traveling with his 8-year-old son Edward, hoping to find a new beginning after the recent loss of his wife. Today, our ROV descends into the freezing darkness of the Atlantic to find the remains of the San Francisco and the millions in blood gold that rest alongside the fallen soldiers. The powerful LED lights of our submersible cut through the thick marine snow as we search for the skeletal remains of the massive iron paddle wheels that once powered this doomed giant. We are searching for a vanishing vault that might hold the secret to the ship's final moments, wondering if the heavy gold was the thing that dragged survivors to their graves. The sonar pings against a massive object on the seafloor, revealing the iconic shape of a sidewall standing like a giant tombstone in the silt, marking the entrance to a graveyard. As the ROV glides closer, we see the twisted iron spokes covered in pale anemones, a haunting reminder of the industrial strength that was no match for the raw power of nature. The hull of the San Francisco has been torn open by the pressure of the abyss, revealing the inner layers of a ship that was slowly eaten alive by the relentless ocean. We navigate the mechanical scout toward a debris field where the wood has long since rotted away, leaving behind the heavy brass and iron components of the ship's massive steam engines. The silt is thick here, but the spotlights catch a dull, metallic glint that doesn't belong in a war zone, suggesting that the treasure of the 3rd Artillery is close at hand. Our cameras focus on a scatter of brass uniform buttons and belt buckles belonging to the elite soldiers who stood their ground while the hurricane tore their world apart around them. It is a somber sight to see these perfectly preserved relics resting where the wool uniforms have dissolved, leaving behind only the cold evidence of the men who once wore them proudly. The ROV moves toward the officers' quarters, where the structural collapse has created a maze of jagged timber and rusted metal that threatens to snag our machine's vital tether in the dark. We are looking for any sign of Sergeant Major Gallagher, the man who chose to dive into the mountainous waves to save his son rather than stay with the safety of wreckage. Near a buckled bulkhead, the mechanical arm of our submersible gently clears a layer of sediment, revealing a rusted artillery sword that likely belonged to a high-ranking officer of the regiment. The tragedy of the San Francisco is often called America's forgotten Titanic, a slow-motion disaster that forced hundreds of people to watch their friends and children wash away into the night. For 2 weeks, the ship was a floating hospital and a morgue, as the cholera outbreak turned the quarantine cabins into places of absolute horror for the sick and the dying. We navigate the ROV toward a small, enclosed compartment that history remembers as the cholera cabin, a haunting space where the most vulnerable survivors were kept away from the healthy. Inside, the silt sits undisturbed on the remains of a wooden bunk, and our lights reveal a small porcelain doll that once belonged to a child who never saw the California sun. Next to the doll lies a leather-bound Bible, its pages swollen by the salt water but its presence offering a silent testimony to the faith that sustained the survivors during their nightmare. The contrast between the material wealth of the gold and the human tragedy of the cholera cabin is a weight that seems to press against our senses in the deep Atlantic. We move back toward the main hull, following a trail of debris that suggests the ship snapped under the immense weight of the water and the heavy gold payroll stored below. The search for the gold vault takes us to the area known as the Iron Room, where the Army's fortune was supposed to be protected from thieves and the elements alike. Our sonar shows a massive structural failure in the keel, where the ship's spine simply gave way, potentially scattering the millions in gold coins across a vast area of the seafloor. Suddenly, the ROV lights illuminate a section of the lower hold where the timber has decayed entirely, revealing a shimmering carpet of thousands of gold coins dated from 1853. It is a staggering discovery, a fortune in blood gold that no one lived to spend, now resting in the silt as a permanent headstone for the 300 souls lost. The mechanical gripper of the ROV reaches down to verify the find, and we see the intricate designs of the coins still visible after more than a century in the deep. Despite the incredible value of the treasure, the atmosphere remains heavy and respectful, as we realize we are trespassing in a sacred graveyard of the United States Army's history. We think of the soldiers who likely died trying to move these heavy crates to the lifeboats, only to have the hurricane smash their tiny vessels into pieces against the hull. The gold was a burden that the San Francisco could not carry, a literal weight that dragged the broken ship down into the abyss during its final hours of agonizing struggle. As the ROV documents the gold spill, we notice a cluster of human remains nearby, their presence a silent guard over the wealth that they were sworn to protect and defend. We move the camera slowly to capture the scale of the massacre, seeing how the coins have mixed with the brass buttons and the personal effects of the 3rd Artillery Regiment. Every coin represents a story of a life cut short, a family destroyed, and a new beginning in the West that was swallowed by the cold waves of the Atlantic. Our expedition moves toward the stern of the ship, where the current is stronger and the marine snow swirls like a ghostly blizzard around the rusted remains of the rudder. The search for the Gallagher locket begins here, in the area where the survivors claimed to see the Sergeant Major make his final, desperate leap into the freezing mountain of water. John Gallagher was a career soldier, a man of duty and honor who had already lost his wife and was determined not to lose his young son to the storm. We scanned the silt near a collapsed officer's desk, hoping to find the silver locket that contained the only photograph of Edward's mother, a precious relic of their old life. The ROV spotlight catches a small, circular object wedged between two rusted plates, and our pilots hold their breath as the mechanical arm moves in for a closer look. It is a silver locket, its surface tarnished by the salt but its shape unmistakable, a tiny piece of a father's heart lost in the vastness of the deep ocean floor. The locket is still snapped shut, protecting the image inside from the environment, just as John tried to protect his son from the hurricane that claimed them both that night. This discovery changes the tone of the mission, shifting our focus from the glittering gold coins to the enduring power of a father's love for his child in the deep. We are reminded that in the crushing pressure of the abyss, all things are made equal, and a silver locket carries as much weight as $1 million in gold. The ROV continues to map the debris trail, finding evidence that the San Francisco didn't just sink, but was torn apart as it plummeted through the dark water columns. We find a section of the mast, its rigging still attached and swaying in the current like the hair of a drowned giant, reaching out from the silt to grab. The blood gold is scattered for hundreds of yards, a trail of tears that marks the final path of a ship that was eaten alive by the ocean over 14 days. Our cameras document a pair of leather boots resting in the mud, their shape perfectly preserved as if their owner had just stepped out of them to swim for safety. There is a profound sense of loneliness at this depth, where the only sound is the hum of our machine and the only light is what we bring with us. We move toward the broken keel, where the ship's backbone snapped, revealing the raw engineering of the mid-19th century and the limits of the human technology at the time. The SS San Francisco was supposed to be invincible, a state-of-the-art marvel of steam and iron, yet it was humbled by the primitive and ancient power of the hurricane. We see the contrast in the ROV's lights between the precision of the gold coins and the jagged, chaotic wreckage of the wooden hull that failed to protect its passengers. The slow-motion disaster of the San Francisco is one of the most agonizing stories in maritime history, as the survivors had to endure 2 weeks of hope and despair. They watched rescue ships like the Three Bells and the Antarctic battle the waves to reach them, only to see the lifeboats smashed and the rescuers forced to wait. Our machine-led exploration is a witness to the finality of that struggle, showing the remains of the very decks where the survivors huddled together for warmth and prayer. We find a cluster of rusted medical instruments near the cholera cabin, a chilling reminder of the doctors who fought a losing battle against the outbreak amidst the storm. Every frame of video we capture is a tribute to the 300 soldiers and family members who died from disease and drowning during those 14 days of hell on Earth. The ROV hovers over a pile of brass belt buckles, each one representing a soldier of the 3rd Artillery who was heading to a new post but found a grave. We are documenting a forgotten chapter of American history, a massacre of the elite that was overshadowed by the Civil War that would follow just a few years later. The gold was meant to pay those soldiers, to build the forts of the West, and to sustain the families who were traveling with the regiment toward their new lives. Instead, it rests here, useless and cold, a glittering carpet for the scavengers of the deep and a mystery for the treasure hunters of the modern world to solve. Our expedition is not just about the money, but about the ethics of disturbing a war grave and the responsibility we have to honor the dead who rest in silt. We move the mechanical scout toward the bow, where the anchor chains are still draped over the sides as if the ship is trying to hold on to the seafloor. The spotlights reveal a small, brass bell half buried in the mud, its surface encrusted with minerals but its voice still echoing in the imagination of those who know history. We imagine the sound of that bell ringing through the hurricane, a desperate signal for help that was swallowed by the roar of the wind and the crashing waves. The ROV begins to map the area around the silver locket, finding more personal effects that belong to the Gallagher family, including a small, lead soldier toy from Edward. This tiny toy soldier, resting near the massive gold coins, is a heartbreaking visual that defines the tragedy of the SS San Francisco and the 3rd Artillery's lost mission. We prepare to move deeper into the Iron Room, to see if the main vault is still intact or if the sea has fully reclaimed the Army's lost payroll. The mission continues as we push our technology to the limit, seeking the truth behind the vanishing vault and the final fate of the gold and the souls. Join us as we go further into the darkness, exploring the shattered dreams of the San Francisco and the heroes who sleep in the deep Atlantic's cold embrace. Our mechanical scout pushes deeper into the lightless labyrinth of the midsection where the wooden bulkheads have been reduced to skeletal ribs by a century of decay and the relentless saltwater pressure. We are searching for the legendary Iron Room where the Army's gold payroll was supposed to be secured against the thieves of the earth, but it was no match for the ocean's fury. The ROV spotlights catch the edge of a massive metal safe, its door torn off by the violent impact of the sinking, showing the raw power that destroyed this state-of-the-art steamship. Inside the safe we find nothing but silt and shadows, suggesting the gold coins were thrown across the seafloor when the hull snapped under the weight of the water and heavy cargo. Our cameras tilt downward to follow a trail of shimmering artifacts that lead us away from the main wreck toward a secondary debris field where the most valuable treasures are finally revealed. There we find the golden carpet, a breathtaking spill of thousands of 1853 gold coins that catch our lights with a cold brilliance that has not faded in over a century. It is a staggering sight of concentrated wealth lying in the dirt, worth millions of dollars today, but it was utterly useless to the starving and sick people clinging to the decks. Near the edge of the gold spill we find a rusted artillery sword, its handle still showing the intricate work of a master craftsman who never imagined it would end up here. The ROV moves toward the area where the mess deck once stood, now a chaotic pile of shattered porcelain and copper cooking pots that served hundreds of meals before the disaster began. We see a row of officers' trunks, their leather covers rotted away, revealing the personal belongings of the men who were leading their families toward a new life in the American West. A pair of heavy brass candlesticks sits in the mud, a reminder of the dim light that illuminated the final desperate prayers of the survivors during those 14 days of drifting terror. The machine-led expedition moves with precision as we document the structural decay that is slowly turning the San Francisco into a part of the natural geological landscape of the deep Atlantic floor. We find a cluster of human remains near the broken keel, their postures suggesting they were huddled together for warmth and comfort as the ship made its final plunge into the dark. There is a profound sense of sadness in this place as we realize the gold-payroll was the very thing that likely prevented the ship from staying afloat during the worst storm. The ROV spotlights illuminate a small leather-bound book, its pages lost to time but its presence near a skeletal hand suggesting a final moment of faith and seeking for divine mercy. We move back toward the cholera cabin where the sickness claimed so many lives before the ocean could, and our lights reveal a small metal basin used by the desperate medical staff. Inside the basin lies a silver spoon, a humble object that was used to feed the sick children who were dying from the outbreak while the storm raged outside the thin walls. The contrast between the shimmering gold coins nearby and this simple silver spoon defines the tragedy of the San Francisco, where material wealth could not buy a single moment of health. Our mechanical grippers gently move a piece of rotted timber to reveal a child's shoe, its leather stiff and blackened by the salt but its shape still holding the memory of Edward. We think of Sergeant Major John Gallagher searching the dark corridors for his son as the water rose and the cholera spread through the panicked and dying crowds on the broken ship. The search for the gold vault has led us to a place of human suffering that transcends the value of any treasure and forces us to confront the reality of the massacre. We document a row of brass uniform buttons bearing the number 3 representing the elite artillery regiment that was nearly wiped out in this forgotten disaster of the high Atlantic seas. The ROV moves slowly past a rusted anchor chain that is draped across the silt like a giant iron snake holding the ghost ship in place against the currents of the deep. We see a collection of glass bottles from the ship's apothecary, their contents long gone but their shapes still intact, representing the failed attempts to treat the cholera with primitive medicines. The machine-led journey continues into the forward hold where the massive engines once turned the paddle wheels, providing the power that made the San Francisco a marvel of 19th century engineering. Now those engines are silent and covered in rust and silt, standing as a testament to the limits of human technology when faced with the overwhelming and raw power of nature. Our cameras capture the reflection of our own lights in the polished brass of a pressure gauge that is still attached to a steam pipe frozen at 0 for eternity now. We navigate the ROV toward a collapsed section of the upper deck where the survivors once watched for rescue ships and saw the waves wash their friends and family members away. The silt is thinner here, allowing us to see the grain of the wooden planks that supported the weight of 700 people during their 2-week nightmare on the open ocean. Near a broken railing we find a silver pocket watch, its case open and its internal gears encrusted with minerals, showing the exact moment the Atlantic claimed the life of its owner. This watch belongs to the same era as the gold coins, but its value is measured in the minutes it recorded before the end of the world for someone on the ship. The ROV moves toward the stern where the current is stronger and we find a trail of silver forks and spoons leading away from the wreck into the vast darkness beyond. It is a trail of tears that marks the violent path of the ship as it snapped in two and spilled its lifeblood across the seafloor in a final act of destruction. We find a brass bugle, its metal tarnished but its form perfect, a silent instrument that once called the soldiers of the 3rd Artillery to duty in the morning light above. Now the bugle is silent and only the hum of our submersible and the sound of the deep-sea currents fill the space where music and commands were once heard by many. The machine-led expedition follows a sonar signal that suggests a large metal object is buried in the mud near the stern, potentially a piece of the iron room or the vault. Our mechanical arm clears the sediment to reveal a heavy iron door, its hinges fused by rust but its strength still apparent after more than 170 years underwater. This could be the vanishing vault that history describes, where the Army's gold was kept to prevent it from being lost during the chaos of the hurricane's most violent and deadly hours. We use the ROV lights to peer through a gap in the metal, seeing the glint of more gold coins stacked inside a rotted wooden box that has collapsed under the pressure. The treasure is here locked in a tomb of iron and silt, a fortune that has not been touched by human hands since the day the San Francisco vanished from the world. But as we look closer, we see a child's porcelain doll resting against the iron door, a haunting reminder that the gold was never more important than the lives of children. This doll likely belonged to a daughter of one of the artillery officers, someone who was playing in the hold before the storm turned the ship into a place of death. The contrast between the cold hard gold and the fragile porcelain doll defines the emotional core of our mission and the tragedy of the massacre that took place on this ship. We move the ROV slowly around the vault, documenting the structural damage and the way the sea has reclaimed the iron room as a part of its own dark and silent world. The machine-led journey through the wreck of the San Francisco is a journey through a world of shadows where every artifact tells a story of hope and ultimate loss in the abyss. We see a collection of leather-bound books buried in the silt, their covers rotted away but their shapes still visible, representing the lost knowledge and stories of the people on board. Our cameras capture a group of small deep-sea crabs moving through the gold coins, oblivious to the value of the treasure but finding a home in the ruins of human ambition. The presence of life in this graveyard is a strange and beautiful sight, showing that even in the deepest darkness the world finds a way to continue and to grow again. We find a pair of spectacles resting on a piece of coal, their glass still intact and reflecting our lights like the eyes of a ghost watching our machine from the past. These glasses belong to someone who was likely trying to read the Bible or write a final letter home as the ship began its final descent into the abyss of the sea. The ROV moves toward the bow where the anchor chains are still hanging, as if the ship is still trying to hold on to the world it left behind so long ago. We see a row of portholes, their glass broken and their frames covered in rust, looking out into the darkness with an expression of eternal sadness and quiet resignation for the souls. The machine-led expedition is a tribute to the memory of the 700 people who lived the nightmare and the 300 who never found their way back to the shore. We document the remains of the main mast, its wood splintered and its rigging tangled like the hair of a giant sea monster reaching out from the grave to grab us. The gold payroll is a symbol of the wealth that was lost, but the personal items we find are the true treasures that connect us to the humanity of the survivors. We find a small silver locket similar to the one we found earlier, but this one is open, revealing the faded image of a woman and a child in the light. The salt water has mostly destroyed the photograph, but the emotion of the item remains clear, a father's love preserved in silver and silk in the deep and dark ocean. Our ROV sensors detect a change in the current as we approach the broken keel where the ship's backbone snapped under the immense weight of the water and the gold payroll. The trail of tears continues beyond the wreck, marking the final moments of the massacre as the ship was torn apart by the currents and the pressure of the deep sea. We see a collection of brass uniform buttons scattered in the mud like small golden stars in the night sky of the seafloor, representing the fallen of the 3rd Artillery Regiment. The machine-led journey is a solemn reminder that in the deep ocean all things are equal, and a gold coin holds no more weight than a soldier's button or silver locket. We move the ROV toward the area where the lifeboats were kept, finding only the twisted iron davits that failed to launch the small vessels into the mountainous and storm waves. The hurricane was too powerful for the technology of the era, and the survivors were left with nothing but their faith in each other to face the coming and dark end. We document the remains of the ship's bell, half buried in the silt, its voice silent now, but its presence a powerful symbol of the duty and the honor of the sailors. The ROV light pans across the debris field, revealing more personal items like a leather shoe and a wooden pipe that once belonged to a soldier of the 3rd Artillery Regiment. Every object we find is a piece of a puzzle that helps us understand the reality of the 14-day nightmare and the final hours of the SS San Francisco in history. We are documenting a forgotten chapter of American history, a massacre of the elite that was overshadowed by the Civil War that would follow just a few short years later. The gold was meant to build the forts of the West and to pay the soldiers who were heading to their new posts, but instead it remains here in the silt. Our machine-led expedition is a journey through a graveyard of dreams and a testament to the fact that true wealth is measured in courage rather than in golden coins today. We find a small silver crucifix resting on a piece of rusted iron, its form perfect and its message of hope and mercy still clear in the dim lights of exploration. The ROV moves toward the stern one last time to document the final resting place of the gold vault before we begin our own ascent toward the surface and the light. The silence of the wreck is absolute, and we leave the San Francisco to its eternal sleep in the deep Atlantic, guarded by the ghosts of the 3rd Artillery soldiers. Our mechanical scout rises through the water column, leaving the golden carpet and the porcelain doll behind in the dark, where the secrets of the massacre will stay forevermore. We carry the images of the locket and the gold coins with us, a weight on our hearts that reminds us of the high cost of human ambition and nature's power. The story of Sergeant Major John Gallagher and his son Edward remains a light in the darkness, a story of love that survived the storm and the deep Atlantic abyss. Join us for the final part of our journey as we honor the names of the fallen and provide a final prayerful memorial for the souls of the San Francisco. The ROV glides slowly through the dark canyons of the broken hull, where the iron ribs of the San Francisco stand like the picked clean bones of a prehistoric beast in the Atlantic deep. We are searching for the final pieces of the puzzle that connect the massive gold payroll to the human stories of the soldiers who guarded it through the hurricane and the cholera. The machine's powerful spotlights illuminate a section of the lower hold where the gold vault was once bolted to the floor, now a twisted mess of rusted metal and thick ocean sediment. Among the debris we see the remains of the iron safe, its doors torn open by the violent impact of the ship snapping in half as it plummeted through the cold water columns. Scattered for dozens of yards around the vault we find more of the 1853 gold coins shimmering in our lights like a field of fallen stars on the dark seafloor. It is a staggering discovery of wealth, but it remains a hollow victory when we consider the 14 days of agonizing suffering the survivors endured while these coins lay useless beneath them. The ROV moves back toward the area where the officers' quarters once stood, a place of shattered hopes where Sergeant Major John Gallagher spent his final hours desperately trying to save Edward. We navigate past a row of rotted wooden bunks where the families of the 3rd Artillery huddled together for warmth while the hurricane winds tore the upper decks away from the ship. The silt in this section is deep and soft, rising in clouds as our machine moves, revealing the brass uniform buttons of the elite regiment still clinging to the dark rotted fabric. These small brass relics are the only remains of the proud soldiers who were heading west to build a new life but found only a cold and watery grave in the ocean. Our mechanical arm reaches out to stabilize the submersible as we focus our cameras on a small silver object partially buried near the corner of a collapsed wooden desk in the cabin. As the silt clears we realize we have found the silver locket that John Gallagher carried throughout the voyage, containing the image of his wife who had passed away a year before. The locket is still snapped shut, protecting the memory of a lost love from the salt and the pressure, just as John tried to protect his son from the mountain waves. Seeing this intimate personal treasure resting in the dirt beside the millions in gold coins brings the true tragedy of the San Francisco into a sharp and painful focus for our team. The gold payroll was the mission of the army, but the locket was the mission of the heart, and in the deep Atlantic both have been reclaimed by the cold abyss. We move our mechanical scout toward the cholera cabin one last time to document the final resting place of the children and the sick who were quarantined during the ship's struggle. The silence inside this compartment is absolute, and we see the porcelain doll resting exactly where we found it earlier, its painted eyes staring into the dark with a look of peace. Beside it we find a small leather boot, its laces still tied, a haunting reminder of the small feet that once walked these decks before the sickness and the storm claimed them. The contrast between the fragile porcelain and the massive iron paddle wheels nearby is a testament to the random and cruel nature of the disaster that struck the 3rd Artillery and families. We are now exploring the ethics of this salvage mission, questioning whether it is right to recover the gold when so many souls still stand watch over the wreckage of their world. The gold is blood, gold wealth that was never spent and lives that were never lived, and we must treat this site as the sacred war grave that it truly is. Our ROV begins to map the final extent of the debris field, following the trail of gold coins that marks the path of the ship's final plunge into the deep darkness. Every coin we see represents a day of work or a soldier's pay, but here they are nothing more than shiny metal resting in a graveyard of iron and rotted wood. We find a rusted artillery sword wedged into a crack in the keel, its blade broken but its handle still showing the proud eagle of the United States Army through rust. This sword was likely held by an officer who died trying to maintain order while the ship was being eaten alive by the ocean floor by floor over those 14 days. The machine's gripper arm gently moves a piece of debris to reveal a small glass inkwell still sitting upright as if waiting for a final letter to be written to families. There were no more letters sent from the San Francisco after the storm hit, only stories told by the lucky few who were rescued by the Three Bells and Antarctic ships nearby. For the 300 who remained, the end was a slow-motion nightmare of rising water and falling hopes as the ship finally surrendered to the weight of the sea and gold. Our expedition now moves toward the stern where the massive rudder lies buried in the mud, its iron surface encrusted with minerals that have grown over the past century and a half. We see a school of deep-sea fish darting through the shadows of the broken hull, their movements the only sign of life in a world that belongs entirely to the past. The ROV light pans across the silt, revealing a row of ceramic plates from the ship's galley standing in a neat stack as if the meal was interrupted only moments ago. It is these small domestic details that break our hearts, showing us the daily lives of the soldiers and their families before the perfect storm turned their voyage into a tomb. We are reminded that the San Francisco was a state-of-the-art marvel of its time, yet it was humbled by the primitive and raw power of the hurricane and the cholera. Our machine-led journey has allowed us to witness the reality of the massacre without disturbing the peace of the dead, but the weight of their story will be carried forever. We find another cluster of gold coins resting inside a leather-bound Bible, the pages long gone but the imprint of the holy word still visible in the mud and water. This image defines the struggle of the survivors who were caught between the material needs of the world and the spiritual needs of their souls as the ship began sinking. We prepare to offer a final memorial segment for the members of the 3rd U.S. Artillery Regiment and their loved ones who are still resting here in the deep Atlantic graveyard. We call upon the names of the fallen like Sergeant Major John Gallagher and his son Edward, asking that their sacrifice be remembered by a nation that has long forgotten them. May the mercy of God reach down into these 2 miles of darkness to bring peace and comfort to the souls who lived through the horror of those 14 days. The ROV hovers in the center of the debris field, its lights illuminating the broken keel and the scattered treasure in a final wide shot of the American Titanic's silent end. We see a silver pocket watch tangled in the rigging, its glass shattered but its hands frozen forever at the exact moment the ocean claimed the last breath of the ship. Time has no meaning in the abyss, but the legacy of these people continues to echo through the halls of history and the stories of the brave soldiers who died serving. The gold payroll will stay here in the silt, a shimmering monument to the wealth that no one lived to spend and the dreams that were buried beneath the mountain waves. We move the mechanical arm to place a small commemorative plaque on the seafloor near the paddle wheels, a simple gesture of respect from the modern world to these fallen heroes. The plaque bears the names of the lost and the date of their final descent into the deep, ensuring that their resting place is marked with the dignity they truly earned. Our mechanical scout begins its slow ascent toward the surface, leaving the porcelain doll and the silver locket behind in the dark, where they will remain for the next 1,000 years. We watch the wreck of the San Francisco fade into the shadows, the powerful LED lights shrinking to a tiny point before being swallowed by the eternal blackness of the abyss. As we rise through the water column, we think of the survivors who watched from the rescue ships as their home and their friends disappeared into the violent and cold foam. The story of the massacre is a story of human failure and natural power, but it is also a story of a father who would not let his son die alone. We are returning to the world of light, but we leave a piece of our hearts in the silt with the 3rd Artillery and the millions in gold they guarded. The journey of the SS San Francisco was a journey of hope that ended in tragedy, but through our expedition their voices have finally been heard by a world that cares. We offer a final prayer for the souls of the departed, asking that they rest in the grace of the Creator and that their story continues to inspire courage in others. The blood gold of the Atlantic is a lesson in the fragility of our ambitions and the strength of the bonds that connect us even in the deepest of places. Our submersible breaks the surface of the water, the cold Atlantic air, a sharp reminder of the world the survivors fought so hard to return to during their hellish nightmare. We look out over the horizon and imagine the steamship as she once was, a proud vessel full of life and music before the hurricane turned her into iron and rust. The names of the 300 will be recorded in our archives and their relics will be preserved in our memories as a tribute to the elite soldiers of them. We thank the families and the historians who helped us piece together this story of the vanishing vault and the father who chose his son over his own life today. This mission was more than a treasure hunt, it was a quest for the truth and a way to bring dignity to a site that has been forgotten for long. The silver locket and the gold coins will rest together in the silence of the deep, proving that the value of love is equal to any earthly fortune ever found. We pause to reflect on the 14 days of the drifting wreck, realizing that the true miracle was the courage of those who survived to tell the story of San Francisco. Every frame of this video is dedicated to the memory of the fallen and the spirit of the soldiers who gave their lives in service to their country and families. We encourage you to support the channel so we can continue to bring these stories to light and honor the heroes who sleep in the dark corners of the ocean. Let the story of Sergeant Major Gallagher be a light for those who face their own storms, reminding them that love is the only thing the sea can never truly destroy. We close this chapter of exploration with a humble heart and a deep respect for the power of the Atlantic and the resilience of the human spirit in the deep. May the souls of the San Francisco rest in eternal peace, and may their golden treasure remain as a silent guard over the brave men of the 3rd Artillery and families. The final image of our journey is the small silver locket resting in the silt, a symbol of a family reunited in the light of the Creator beyond the dark waves. We hope you have been moved by this journey and that you will join us again as we explore the mysteries of the deep sea and the stories of forgotten. The Atlantic is a vast and lonely place, but it holds the history of our world in its cold embrace, and we are honored to be its witnesses for today. The 1853 gold coins will continue to shimmer in the dark, a reminder of the wealth that failed to save the lives of the innocent and the brave soldiers. But the silver locket will continue to shine with a different kind of light, a light that comes from the heart and the eternal hope of a father for his child. We finish our work with a solemn salute to the 3rd U.S. Artillery Regiment, knowing that their story has finally found its way back to the land they were seeking to protect. The sun sets over the ocean as we secure our equipment and prepare to return home, carrying the weight of the deep sea and the grace of the souls found. The SS San Francisco is a ghost ship no more, but a living part of our history and a testament to the fact that no one is truly lost if remembered. We leave you with the silence of the abyss and the glittering promise of the gold, a treasure that is now guarded by the heroes of the Atlantic for eternity. May their spirits find the rest they deserve, and may we always look to the sea with a spirit of gratitude for the lessons it teaches us about our own humanity.